Let's call to order the January 17th Plan Commission meeting. Let's please start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, please take roll.
Sharon Walker,
Present.
Jim Hurst,
Present.
Dave France,
Present.
Mary Grabianowski,
Present.
Chris Lake,
Present.
Cindy Madrick,
Present.
Larry Jones.
Present. All right, thank you. At this point, we need to elect officers for the coming year. Is there a nomination for the president?
Dave France.
Is there any other nominations? If not,
I will be elected by acclamation.
You can make that motion.
all right. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. All right, that motion carries. Service, I'm happy to do it again. We need a nomination for the vice president.
Oh, Chris Lake, I nominate Chris Lake by
Second.
acclamation.
Any further discussion? She did second.
I'll accept.
All right, all in favor, signify by aye. Opposed by nay. Chris, you're vice president again. And then we need a nomination for secretary.
Mike Dale.
Mike Dale.
I nominate Mike Dale.
Is there a second?
Second.
All, any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Mike, you're secretary again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put your name back.
In the packet, there was a meetings from December 19th Plan Commission meeting. Was there any comments, additions, deletions to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. The minutes are approved. We have two requests for continuances. Docket number 2022-53 PP, Epcon Communities, the courtyards at Russell Oaks, and 2022-54 PP, same property, same name, address 8901 and 90085 East Oak Street, Zionsville. Petition for approval of primary plat for 150-foot lot residential subdivision being zoned rural single and two-family residential. Do we need to take those separately, Dan?
You can do them together.
Okay, so there's been a request to continue both of these matters. Is there any discussion? If not, is there a motion to continue these two matters?
I move that we continue these two matters.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. So those two matters are continued to the February 21st meeting. So, all right, on to continued business. 2022-50 RP, this online replat of lot J8 and Clubhouse lot in Holiday Farms, 3983 Club Ridge Estate, Zionsville. Petition for the approval of replat to the existing property line between the Clubhouse lot and lot J8, incorporated a portion of the unplatted lot with lot J8 being in the planned unit development district, Holiday Farm PUD. Petitioner present, are they online? Okay, would you please promote them?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
I believe you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, cannot hear you. Hold on.
How about now?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Well, good evening, members of the Plan Commission. My name is Phil Sunling and I'm with the Henke Development Group. I want to start here with a brief update from our previous public hearing, which was held on November 21st, 2022, where we ended up requesting a continuance due to a number of questions and concerns from you all. Since that time, we have been able to provide staff with all of this information, And I'd like to run through those updates briefly with you guys tonight. Let me share my screen here. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Just to kind of recap as to where we are, this is 421 here. This is our main entry. If you take that main Holiday Farms Boulevard all the way back to the western edge of our project, talking J8, which is where our temporary clubhouse is, which is directly across the street from our new permanent clubhouse, which is under construction. First, I think the biggest concern was regarding the improvements that were made outside of buildable areas as part of our temporary clubhouse operation. This included a driveway extension, patio, and a pergola covered grill station. We fortunately were able to make various adjustments to our lot as part of this replat to ensure that all these improvements are able to remain in place. And we've also confirmed with staff that this now is fully compliant. We were also able to confirm through as-builts all of the utility infrastructure that's in place, and we were able to incorporate those into easements with this replat. And lastly, there were concerns regarding drainage or questions on the drainage, and we've confirmed with staff that there are no negative impacts with this replat. I just want to add that I really appreciate your patience as we work through these concerns, and especially staff's patience. Janice and Roger have been awesome to work with and have been very helpful for us, of course, per usual. And I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this point, is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this matter or online? Being none, staff report, please.
This petition requests to reflect the existing property lines between the existing clubhouse lot and lot J8, incorporating a portion of the unplatted lot with J8. The hearing originally opened at the Plan Commission November 21st meeting and was continued in order to provide clarity on the location of the existing structures and the relationship to the property lines. In the January Plan Commission packets, the members have received a plot plan which defines property lines, all structures on the parcel, and the setback measurements from the structures to the property lines. Staff, including the town engineer and the town's contractual engineer, have reviewed the meeting materials and are in agreement that the plat and plot plan both reflect compliance to the Holiday Farms Development Standards PUD and to town standards for the replat. With this, staff recommends approval of petition 2022-50-RP.
All right, thank you, Janice. Anybody on the commission have any questions, comments?
I just want to check if I'm reading this correctly. So this is lot J8 we're talking about. And it looks like lot J7 has a 35-foot building setback line behind it. So are you changing the building setback lines for this one lot?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again, Mr. Jones, and this will maybe. So this is how the house orients here with the back porch. Can you guys see this, first of all?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so essentially what we're doing in this rear here, this is where the patio is, and in this small area down here is where the covered pergola is. I think that was one of the major sticking points or conversation points of the last hearing. So essentially what we're doing is on this western property line is adjusting that BSL to ensure that all of this remains compliant.
So when it comes to the schedule of building setback lines you guys generate, they're basically arbitrary. Is that correct? You guys can change them if you want.
They're not necessarily arbitrary, but yeah, I mean, with it being a custom community, there are certain pieces, certain natural or unnatural pieces of infrastructure that are there that we want to make sure we accommodate or protect. So you'll see a lot like in areas where we are trying to save trees along the golf course or streams as part of the development, you'll see variable BSLs. The matrix applies to kind of a standard lot that doesn't have any of those resources. But yeah, to your point, absolutely. We have, I would say 50%, maybe less than that, 30% of the lots at Holiday Farms have, we'll call them custom BSLs to accommodate some of these these types of things.
And so what sub area or what block sub area would this lot typically be?
It's the square sub area. Let me go back to the plat. Oh, here, it's down here. It's sub area G. So generally, a sub area G would have, it's a minimum of 70-foot width. The lot frontage, obviously minimum is 20 feet. Front setback is 10, side is 5, rear is 10. You'll see in certain circumstances, we adjust from, like I just explained, we adjust from these. But if there are no adjustments noted on the plan, I think, I'm glad you're bringing this up because I think there was a lot of confusion last meeting. There are certain circumstances where this matrix applies perfectly, and there are certain circumstances where there are adjustments from it. Anytime that happens, they are noted on the plat itself. And I could show you an example if it's helpful, but.
So then when I'm looking at lot J7, even on the existing conditions exhibit, it shows a 35-foot building setback line. It really should be a 10-foot building setback line across the rear.
It depends on what sub area J7 is. It doesn't show on here. I could dig it up real quickly, but if
That's
it's
sub area D, it looks like.
if
the
that's sub area D, then yes, it would fall under here unless there is a custom revision on that plat itself.
No, just as I'm looking at it, so lots J2, J3, J4, J5, J6 are all sub area D. But when you get to 7, it looks like it's got the little square box.
Yep.
So it goes to a G. I'm just, once again, we've run into this as an issue at BZA. I'm just kind of doing my homework
Sure.
of trying to clarify, one, how this is supposed to work, two, how it's at your discretion to revise it if you so choose. That's it. And then I am correct, you're actually revising the rear property line of this lot, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. It's essentially the south. I think the south boundary and this west boundary changes along with this. We'll call it the northwest boundary. The east boundary remained as is.
So if this was not a change to the lot line and just a request for the setbacks, then that would just go straight to the BZA, correct?
No, not that I think
Because
generally yeah, I don't know if that question was for me. If it was, what we've done in the past, and when we have changed sub areas on certain lots, and we have brought those as a replat through the Plan Commission. There was a D lot that we did, and I think there's maybe one other one that we've done that way.
all right. Okay, all right, never mind. So. Any other questions? If not, is there a motion on this matter?
I move to approve docket number 2022-50-RP replat to relocate the existing property line between the clubhouse lot and lot J8, incorporating a portion of the unplatted lot with lot J8 in the planned unit development district Holiday Farms PUD attached as Exhibit 7, be approved as presented and described based on the findings in the staff report and staff recommendations and submitted findings of fact.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mike, would you please take roll?
Larry Jones,
Aye.
Cindy Madrick,
Aye.
Chris Lake,
Aye.
Mary Greg Yanowski,
Aye.
Dave France,
Aye.
Jim Hurst,
Aye.
Sharon Walker.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next on the docket is 2022-56-DP Stack Storage LLC, Project WIT, 7283 South 650 East, Whitestown, Indiana. Petition for development plan approval of a 139,192 square foot, 3-story self-storage facility on 3.28 plus minus acres in the rural light industrial I-1 zoning district
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, Mike Andrioli, 1393 West Oak Street. With me tonight to my left is Brian Stewart, who is a civil engineer with Kimley Horn and working with the developer, Mike Shanahan, with regard to this project. Ben Graber is the architect that we work with, and he may be online. I know he's not here with us personally tonight. Just to recap a little bit, we were here at the last meeting, and the meeting was continued at the suggestion of staff, and we concurred with that because of the newly raised issues with regard to whether the project complied with the I-65 overlay district. And at that time, we decided to see if we could work with staff and try to eliminate the concerns with regard to the I-65 overlay district by redrafting some of the site, but essentially making some architectural changes to the building. In my packet to you, I've laid out by way of letter form the analysis that we had in terms of what we did with regard to the architectural designs, in particular to the front of the building, in particular to the interstate facing side of the building, and a couple of other matters that we had actually went ahead and noticed for plat waivers, but we think based upon the information that we provided and working with staff who've been very generous with their time and working with us on this, to try to come up with some architectural details and some additional information so that those plat waivers were not required. Another significant change, as I mentioned at the last meeting, is that we withdrew our request or application on the site for the outdoor advertising sign. That was pursuant to your I-65 overlay, that would require a use variance since they're not permitted in that particular district under the I-65 overlay district. So we withdrew that from the application and are not moving forward with that. So from an architectural standpoint, I'm going to have Brian discuss with you a little bit and show you that facade so that you've got a number of architectural drawings and they show different facades, but making sure that you see the facade that's going to face 465 and I-65. The other thing I might mention is that, and staff had suggested this, given the architectural features that we put on the top of the building to hide all of the HVAC units and those types of things, suggested it might be good to do a sightline exhibit to show exactly what is being seen from the various uses that were around that. And we thought that was a good idea and a good suggestion to be able to show that the staff, as well as the Plan Commission, that we were in compliance with the I-65 overlay with regard to those visuals. One other thing before I turn it over to Brian, the I-65 overlay does not require us to have to enter from I-65, looking at I-65. That's not what it says. It just says it has to have features of the main entrance. And the intent of that is that you don't want to look simply on the side of a building without any architectural features along I-65. So what we tried to do is take some of the architectural features from our main entrance, which is off of the side road 650, and apply those to the architectural significance of the building that faces I-65. We think we've met the spirit and intent of that particular ordinance, but ultimately that's your decision to be able to make that decisions.
Sure. Good evening, Brian Stewart, Kimley Horn Associates, civil engineer on the project. 250 East 96th Street, Suite 580, Indianapolis, Indiana, with Kimley Horn. What you see on the screen is the site plan. That really hasn't changed from the last time we were here in December. But to reorient you and the public, the site is on a skew, slightly confusing because the north is actually to the left. So the east face, which is I'm going to call it the I-65 facing side or 865, depending on how you look at it, is on this side. And then when we talk about entries, there's really 3 entries on this site because there's we'll call it the main entry where people can walk into a small office, and that's on the southwest but there are drive-in entries where overhead doors roll up and you can actually drive vehicles into the building to unload. I'd count those as entries as well. And that's both right next to the office on the southwest side, as well as on the actual interstate facing side, which you'll see in the architecture that I'll show here. What you see, and I have both elevations and renderings that I can show you both, but I'll show you the renderings first. This is the south west corner. As you can see, there's a set of double doors, a lot of glass in this view. And then these are the two overhead doors that you can pull into. This drive that you see here goes out and connects to the frontage road. That's the public right of way to access the site. You'll notice the banding of the orange around the outside and architectural features, a sign that's shown there. If we look at the other side of the building, which is right above it, it looks very, very similar. So that is the northeast corner of the building. So if you're on the interstate driving by, this is what you're going to see next to the other two drive-in doors, which I'll note have glass in the door that you can see into. We paid particular attention to what the ordinance says, and I thank the town staff as well, because they had helped us by, this is such a unique situation, they'd helped us by putting together a comparison table. So they studied the document, which I won't bore you with all the recorded document language here, but they put together a table for us, and we spent time going through line by line, looking at them and figuring out where did we fall short and what can we do in good faith to reach the intent of what it's shown. We feel, and I'll highlight the things that have been updated here individually. There's a note within that 65 overlay that mentions that you have to have these, and I don't want to butcher it. I'd actually just like to read it specifically. Yeah, so this first one says facades of all primary structures located within the I-65 South Overlay District and facing parallel to Interstate 65, which is us, or any other Indianapolis Road or any other primary thoroughfare identified within the Boone County Comprehensive Plan shall contain at least one main building entrance of the type described below. To me, the drive-in doors are at least one main entrance, in my opinion. And then this goes on to have some other language here, but it does point to J4, which if I pan south or south down, says building entrances shall be defined and articulated by architectural elements such as lintels, pediments, pilasters, columns, and other design elements appropriate to the architectural style and details of the building as a whole. The location, orientation, proportion, and style of doors must faithfully reflect the chosen style of the building. Building facades for industrial warehouse uses shall be designed with a main entrance of at least 2 window openings associated with this doorway. So we took that very literally. And in our opinion, if I go back here, to us, the banding of the orange around the similar treatment of the architecture in the corner and the fact that there are glass in these doors check the boxes of what the ordinance reads word for word, in our opinion. So we worked back and forth with staff. Staff obviously did the right thing and said this is ultimately up to the Plan Commission, but that's what we did with architecture. As well as Mr. Andreoli mentioned, we did do a sightline study looking at a few different directions from the interstate, looking in this case due west from Indianapolis Road and County Road 650, and then also from the Little League building. And then in the last from our resident immediately to the north. Those different sight lines, and I think this is on file, I'm sure it is, shows that the rooftop equipment is inset into the building enough in all those directions that would not be visible. And that we understand that's a constraint and requirement when it comes to the architecture. If the Planning Commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah.
Couple of other matters with regard to the process. This is kind of uncharted territory a little bit. We've never used the I-65 overlay district before in applying it to any of these things. So it was a little learning curve for staff as well as our efforts to try to understand not only the strict wording of it, but some of the subjective aspects of it is a little bit subjective. And so we tried to do our best to make sure that we put these architectural features so that this building wouldn't just have just a blank side to it facing I-65. And we really thought that was the intent of what they wanted to do. They wanted to see some architectural features and not just the side of a building facing I-65 to try to get the best appearance you can up and down I-65. And we think we've accomplished that. You'll be the ultimate judge of that, but essentially we think we've accomplished that with regard to some of the plat waivers that we requested. We think we've absolutely complied with those, but and staff agreed with that as well, that they're not really necessary that we go forward with those since we've complied with them. But again, we'd be happy to take any questions or comments from members of the plan commission. It's a little different procedures than what we've done before with regard to this particular order.
All right, thank you. At this time, is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this matter? Go forward. Please state your name and address.
Hi, Nathan Harris, 7286 Dugan Drive, Whitestown, Indiana. I live in Westwood Landing, which is just south and west of subject property. Very nice presentation. I appreciate the effort put in to enhance the look and feel of the building. There's a few things that I think are still lacking, from my personal opinion, just from what you cited. The northwest corner of the building does face I-65. There's a pretty clear view of it as you're driving south, and that corner has not really been enhanced at all. There's some connectivity. It looks like there has been a sidewalk added along the west side of the property, but it doesn't really match with what's on Indianapolis Road. Along Indianapolis Road, there's an asphalt multi-use path. I believe it's maybe 8 or 10 feet wide. What's shown on the plan is only 5 feet wide. It's a typical concrete sidewalk. I think that probably would help fit in with the neighboring area. I looked at the lighting plan as well. It looks like there's just lights around the building, attached to the building. They seem pretty high up on the building. I know there's not really a clear standard for that, but most of them are 16.5 feet high. Some are 18 feet high. I do have some neighbors that have a clear view of this building. And maybe not the light packs on the outside of the building. The glass is nice on the building, but it's very clearly visible what's inside the building when you're looking at it. And I'm assuming if somebody would come, it's accessible 24/7. If those lights were to come on, it's probably not as shielded probably as the lights on the building face would be. Perhaps they could tint the glass to shield the view of the bright orange roll-up doors, perhaps. Right along Indianapolis Road, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 homes and their bedrooms face that way. So that's a clear view at night from their bedrooms when they see that property. I'm not representing the neighbor to the north, but some of the landscaping seems to be a bit lacking. It's hardly any evergreens. The evergreens that are there are pretty low. I think maybe max height of 3 feet. There's a pretty clear view from Indianapolis Road of the site. And I'm sure the intent, there's quite a bit of landscaping on the west side of the site, is to kind of shield that front face from public view. I'm sure they're trying to be accommodating, but it'd be nice maybe to switch out some of the plant types to more of an evergreen type of planting that wouldn't lose its leaves in the fall and winter. Same thing around the pond. There's only a little bit of landscaping at the pond, probably that southwest corner. But that's, again, it's pretty visible if you're on the west side of the pond or even the southeast side of the pond. Perhaps folks coming from Eagle's Nest could, see the building pretty clearly there. Just a few things that I think if you are going to approve this, it'd be nice to get those incorporated into a final development.
All right,
That's all I've got.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this? Mr. Andrew, with a comment or respond?
Yes. some of the design and architectural, I'll have Brian try to answer some of those questions that the gentlemen have.
Yeah, and Mr. Harris, if I miss anything, let me know. I was trying to take a few notes there. I believe the first thing he mentioned was the north side of the building. I'll flip back to the site plan for view, and correct, there are trees and other elements here on the north side. But you know, as you're driving southbound, you may see the north side of the building and not just the west side of the building. Or I'm sorry, the east side of the building. I'll go back to the elevation so that you can see what that looks like. So the north elevation here, which just to orient you, this would be the northeast corner. This would be the northwest corner. Subjectively, I see 3 of the 4 corners with heavy glass on them all the way up. I don't, this is, I think, the corner that he's referring to, which is the northwest corner. I think the treatment on the north face of the building has not been forgotten, in my personal opinion. I'd certainly happy to discuss that more if you'd like. The east side, I keep getting myself confused, which is the interstate facing side, really has the most. It has a glass feature on both the south and the north. And then this would be what you see from 650, which orients you down towards the entry down here on the corner, which is closest to Indianapolis Road. Second note about landscaping, we had worked closely with staff identifying what the buffer types, what the landscape levels need to be on all corners based on surrounding zonings. Feel that we've met the intent. If staff or the planning commission would prefer certain varietals over others, I don't think we have an issue with that. The property owner to the north, which we are closest to, is also the seller of this property to us. So it's a good thing to bear in mind is our buffer with the resident that's closest is also the seller. And then sidewalk and path. The road out front is the jurisdiction of Whitestown. That was a confusion at the start, whether it was the county or if it was Whitestown. In both, correct me if I'm wrong here, Roger and Janice, but I believe both the town and Whitestown wanted to see a pedestrian path, and it was landed on as a sidewalk was sufficient at that time. Mr. Harris is correct. There's a trail. It's on the other side of Indianapolis Road. So for the time being, the sidewalk fronts our property down towards Indianapolis Road and stops at our property. It is, you know, the trail or path to nowhere, sidewalk to nowhere at this point, but at some point there may be some connectivity that with other improvements along Indianapolis Road.
And might add, as far as the road itself is concerned, that road is going to be completely redone and reconstituted pursuant to Whitestown's request. So the road up to our boundary of our property, not the front boundary, but at the back of our property, closest to the interstate and to the north and the northeast, that will be all redone and be paved pursuant to Whitestown standards with a walking path like that.
Yeah, and you can see it on the screen. I mean, we started off thinking we were going to widen the road, and that was going to be a saw cut widen. After discussions with Whitestown, it was found that the existing road probably wasn't meant for any type of meaningful traffic. So we're already going to be doing a complete reconstruction of that entire length with the sidewalk added off to the side as well. There is a challenge. I mean, practically there is a challenge with width. We've got the road, a grass strip, the sidewalk, and a swale through there, some storm infrastructure, a legal drain, urban regulated drainage easement, landscaping. There's a lot of things that are all crammed into that space. And we found a way to make it work. Widening that 5-foot walk to a trail would probably be very difficult in that location. So we feel we've met the intent of what's been asked of us. And then lastly, lighting. Mr. Harris is correct. We are showing wall packs. As condensive a site as it is, we didn't need pole lights around the site. It can be covered with the wall pack lighting, and those are downlit. So according to the photometric plan, it should reach 0.0 foot candles at the property line, which is what the ordinance requires. His question about walking around inside the building and those lights turn on, that's a great question. I don't think I can speak to that. I'm not sure if Ben Graber is online. I think, is he online? Ben, not to put you on the spot, but do you have any notes to suggest on that? I would imagine the lights would come on, but hopefully they wouldn't be bright enough to bother neighboring residents. One second, Ben. Sounds like we're trying to unmute you.
Can you all hear me now? Am I on now? Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ben. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, so to
Please
provide
state your
some
name
help.
and
Oh, hey, Ben, state your name
and address, please.
Yeah.
Apologize. Yeah. This is Ben Graber with Arco Murray Design Build. We're the architect and general contractor for the project. Brian, thanks for the introduction. To provide some color to the question on the lighting inside the building. The doors that are visible through the glass from outside the building are intended to be a display only area. So those areas cannot be accessed by customer and limited access for building operations team. And so while you can see inside the building through those glass sections, those are not visible into any public corridors inside the building. So meant to be only what we consider to be faux display areas only.
And those lights would be off at night?
Can be turned off or kept on a timer. That would really be up to the building operations team and the facility marketing team on how they intended to use the lighting function in those areas.
So I have a question for staff. The lighting ordinance, it is simply looking at light trespass from exterior light sources. Is that correct? It does not factor
Exterior
in.
light sources
Okay.
out to the property line.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That was just a personal clarification.
Did I miss anything? I said, I think I covered your.
What's the current use of this parcel?
It's a vacant parcel today.
I'm just looking at the aerial. I don't know what the date on it is, trying to figure out what they've been doing there. Has it been kind of a temporary staging area or this?
No, there were trees on the property that were cut down, fell in place at some point last year, but it's been vacant as far as I think forever. There was previously a drainage line put through the middle of it by the Little League development to drain a small piece of the land between Indianapolis Road and 650 in the wooded area to appease NDOT and the town of Whitestown. And that's been accommodated with our drainage design as an offsite flow. It runs over and connects to the NDOT ditch to the east.
So relative to the lighting, obviously facing interstate, you know, the glass lighting, the interior lighting that is, I don't think the residents would really care about that. But the windows that are facing the resident, the neighborhood across the street, could it be stipulated that those would be only on during daylight hours?
I don't. It's probably not.
I don't think that would be a problem. I think we could probably work and make sure what type of brightness level. I don't know how that particular area is going to actually be used at all. And I think that there might be something that could be done from a lighting standpoint to have very low level lighting so it could present a nice picture, but not necessarily be obnoxious or a nuisance to people that would be looking at it or in the area. You know, you've got Indianapolis Road, and then you've got backs of properties, and then a road over in Westwood Landing. And so those would be the people that would be necessarily the most affected by those would be, or those driving along Indianapolis Road, but they probably wouldn't care. But the people that have backs of houses there in Westwood Landing, and I think I think we can make a commitment to try to work with the lighting to make sure that it is low level enough so that it's functional for what it needs to be, but yet would be in a situation where it would not be overly bright. And I think that can be adjusted, and we could work on that, work with staff on that. It may be almost a trial and error type thing. We get it going and see what it looks like, and then if we have to scale it back, we could certainly be in a position of that. We want to be good neighbors. We don't want to be a nuisance. We don't want to be a concern. So to the extent that we need to do that, yes, we'll make a commitment to work with staff to see what we can do with regard to lighting to make sure it serves its purpose, but only its purpose, and doesn't emanate so much off site that it's going to cause a nuisance or a problem visually or otherwise.
All right, thank you.
I mean, it is
Right,
worth
that-
noting that the closest residence is 300 or 400 feet away.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get more light trespass from a neighbor that has string lights on their pergola in their backyard from one neighbor to the next. And you're gonna get coming out of these windows going all the way across Indianapolis Avenue. Or somebody that's got a security, motion sensor security light on the corner of their house, so.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I did pull up on the screen the photometric plan in that southeast corner, and it gets down to 0 at the edge of the road. But because for safety and security, it does need to be fairly bright at those drive-in doors, which is what this shows. But that's because the lights are downlit, so they shouldn't get past for very far, basically the edge of the road. For the lights, the overhead lights, we can certainly work on what that looks like, or if they turn off. Yeah.
Talked with Mike Shanahan that historically, there's less activity as the evening goes along with these types of places. They're generally utilized and accessed earlier as opposed to much later in the evening. Of course, that varies during the summer. It's light a lot in summer, and the winter it gets dark a lot earlier. But so there's going to be that transition from a seasonal standpoint. But generally, most of the activities, 9 to 5 activity, as opposed to much later in the evening.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So is access 24/7 to these spaces?
I believe that is the case, Ben. I'm not sure if you want to confirm that, but I believe that is the case. I believe that's true, Mr. Jones.
But there are no real exterior loading docks per se.
No,
No,
those are
for-
just,
It's all interior.
It's all interior.
right.
No, they're not. The whole concept, it's kind of a new concept to me, but I talked to them. The concept was be able to drive in there and unload in there and not have to unload outside and carry it in the building. The doors go up and you can unload in the building itself.
There's a freight elevator as well, so you can pull your vehicle in, and then there's a freight elevator next to the loading locations, which take you upstairs.
Not your car, but just.
These are odd lots created from the the construction of the interstate, 50 years ago. And so as far as a type of use and type of impact, given the fact that these type of businesses don't generate semi truck trailer, at best they're going to get a box van or a pickup truck. All their actual activities takes on into the interior of the building. The lighting on the exterior of the building isn't really keyed to anything going on inside. It's the selection of materials, the design, it's obviously put together to be somewhat contemporary, and it's also designed to be pretty low maintenance. And I think the biggest effect the neighborhood will get from a 3-story building is it'll help block sound from the interstate, which would actually, I think, would be a net gain to the neighbors. Obviously, nobody likes change, but I think eventually this disappears as an issue to the adjoining property owners.
Any other questions, comments? If not, is there a motion?
Sorry.
Staff.
Oh, real quick, I had to clear my throat. There was some discussion of the type of landscaping. The staff or anyone with more knowledge than me, would it be beneficial to the neighbors to lend toward a mix heavier on evergreens than what exists now?
So I jumped the staff report, like we had such a
Okay.
discussion. I did not get that. So let's have the staff report and then we can discuss that after, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So staff report, sorry about that.
Thank you. As was mentioned, this petition was first introduced to the Planning Commission on December 19th and continued to tonight's meeting. Since the December 19th meeting, revised materials have been submitted for staff's review, and these revised materials specifically address the I-65 overlay requirements. As a reminder, at the December meeting, included within the staff report was a chart that staff had generated that identified the different standards that the I-65 overlay required. And within that chart, I then tried to identify where the project did comply and where it did not. And then also for those areas where it did not, which items could be granted waivers if the Plan Commission would deem it worthy, or in some cases where waivers were not an option according to the I-65 overlay, but a variance of development standards would be required for that area of non-compliance. I have updated that chart, which is Exhibit 6 in this staff report. And those items that had previously been identified as items that could be waived by you, and the petitioner didn't include these waiver requests in their legal notice, the revised materials show that those waivers are no longer needed. So even though they were requested within the legal notice, staff's review of the revised materials finds that the updated drawings and materials do meet the I-65 overlay, so waivers are not required for those items. The one item that staff requests the Plan Commission still to make a determination on is one item that if you say no, it doesn't meet the standards, it would require a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. If you say it complies, wonderful, we continue moving forward tonight. And that one item is, as the petitioner has pointed out, it is the primary structure's orientation toward I-65 and how they have addressed trying to enhance the building's east facade, which faces I-65, to make that a primary building orientation. So that is one question staff is asking the Plan Commission to make a determination on as to whether this redesign does or does not meet that requirement. I will point out within the staff report, I had two directional errors, which is embarrassing to me because I take pride in my directions. But anyway, twice I note that the building's west elevation faces I-65 and it should be building's east elevation. So I apologize for that. The other items that I want to mention tonight, in addition to Mr. Harris speaking, two of the Plan Commission members received a letter of remonstrance from another resident of Westwood Landing. I was given that just before the meeting started and made copies and passed that out to all of the Plan Commission members as well as the petitioner, so everyone is informed of that letter. With that, if the Plan Commission determines that the east facade does comply with the I-65 overlay standards, staff is in support of the request for development plan approval. If you determine that it still does not comply with the I-65 requirements, the project will need to pursue a variance of development standards from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
All right, thank you. All right, let's open it back up. So,
Well, I'll jump to the whether or not the east side complies with the I-65 overlay. I think I'd feel very differently, would have a strong opinion if there was a lot of outside activity, a lot of parking that was having this entrance on the west side. A lot of parking, a lot of ingress egress there. That would feel to me more like they had not met the overlay requirements. so few parking places that I see associated with this, and most of the business conducted is conducted inside the building. In this instance, I feel like it meets the I-65 overlay. But in my mind, it comes down a lot to the parking footprint on the west side of the building is really so small.
I mean, I would kind of second that. I believe architecturally they've met the intent of the requirement, because it doesn't say it has to be your main entrance. It describes entrance elements, things that are common to an entrance. And I think that if you took the parking spaces out of the equation altogether and you told somebody to go to the building and find an entrance, they would recognize that corner of the building as much of an entrance as the southwest corner of the building. So I think from that standpoint, they've met the intent of making it look like there's an entrance on 65. So.
Once again, I concur as well. I think the intent is to make sure the buildings facing I-65 just do not look like the plain back end of an building, and this one doesn't.
Well, and I think the upside with this building as well is having an entrance on the southwest corner means that the side facing the neighbors doesn't look like the back of a building. So from a property value standpoint, it would probably be worse to have the back of the building facing residents versus what looks like a front of a building facing residents, because you put more money into that facing side of the building.
So would it take a motion to say it meets, or is that just part of the,
No,
okay, all right.
And Jim, you brought up the issue of landscaping.
Yeah, I had not forgotten. I just figured we'd tackle the one that Roger specifically raised. The staff had approved or recommended that we accept it with this landscaping. Would, in your estimation, would the neighbors be better served by a higher mix of evergreens and landscaping?
First of all, the ordinance requirements for the buffer yards have been met by the proposed landscape plan. Now, in response to your question about would it be better served if we had taller pines or something like that? As you raised that question, I reflected back upon a comment Mr. Jones made about the distance from the nearest home to this area. With the GIS software available to me, it measures out to roughly 300 feet from the rear property line of the nearest home site to where the building would approximately be located. With that amount of distance, it's a personal opinion, I do not see that there would be any benefit to having to increasing the plantings to pines or anything of that nature. Given that amount of distance, I don't see how those would do any more screening of the building from these residences than what is being proposed.
I take your point. From 300 feet, even fig trees look small. Thank you.
Yeah, you say something?
I was just going to ask, I do think the lighting should be taken into consideration. You had made a comment that you consider that. I think we need to get that on the record. I would appreciate that. I think everybody would, to make sure that you're consulting with some group within the neighborhood on what works. Nobody wants to wake up in the middle of the night from a glaring light. The 300 feet does help, though, no question.
Yeah, that's. My question was just regarding the comment letters from the town engineer and the Whitestown Public Utilities, the items in Exhibit 8. Are there any issues in there that seem to be unresolved, or?
There are items that still need to be resolved, but are they major items in staff's determination? And again, staff, I've mentioned this in prior hearings. Staff is not just those of us here at this table, but also including engineering staff and fire department, things like that. In staff's determination, the remaining items to be addressed are not significant.
And Mr. Jones, I can note, we've been working back and forth with NDOT and with George specifically on staff. This is a unique circumstance because NDOT's actually asking us to release more water than the Zionsville ordinance tells us to release, because they want to see water get out into the roadside ditch more quickly, which two different standards. It's unique. We had to go back to both of them, holidays, Christmas, time off, stuff to get everybody on the same page. But I think George's final remarks were, it's going to an NDOT facility, an NDOT ditch. If they want to receive a higher, slightly higher flow, that's okay. So we're working through the details and just crossing the T's on making that work. And then I was also on the phone with Danny Powers at Whitestown earlier today, and he's supposed to be sending me confirmation of the sewer connection point, which manhole he wants to hit on the other side of Indianapolis Road. It'll be a directional drill, which is a trenchless style construction underneath Indianapolis Road. And then where exactly he wants us to hit the water on the other side. So what's shown in the plans, we've addressed his comments. We're quite literally waiting on him to tell us a few things and then to revise the plans and submit them for the record.
Questions, comments?
I'm a little bit of concern with the lighting. Cindy, I was thinking about your comment. You can see that there's a street light on down the road, 1,000 feet down the road, but that light never trespasses onto your property. The lumens literally never reach your property. So at what point do we allow a resident to say, you can't have a light 1,000 foot down there because I can see it? Even though they don't understand that just because they can see it doesn't mean they're not getting light trespass on their property. So if the lighting plan shows 0 light trespass off the property, they're still going to be able to look out and see that that wall pack light is on or off. Same thing with the window. They're going to see that the window is glowing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's light trespass. And so I'm concerned a little bit I think it's great that you're willing to talk with the residents, but if the residents say, we don't want any lights on in the building ever, they're still going to see the light from the wall packs that are illuminating the whole face of the building.
So, Mr. Lake, so I've done a lot of warehousing in Whitestown. It probably close to 24 buildings by now in the Whitestown area. One thing that we've discovered over time is that you can choose what I'm going to use. It's probably not the right technical term, but the heat, the look of the light.
Temperature.
Oftentimes you get a very white, almost like a xenon headlight that's piercing. You can also get more of a yellow toned light that's softer. You can still see it, but we've found success and we've come to find that it's not any more expensive to put a yellow style light in. And we've gotten pretty good feedback from neighbors. That's something that it hasn't necessarily come up as a commitment in Whitestown, for instance, in Plan Commission, but in practice, we've recommended people go that direction. And we found that there's been a lot less complaints from people.
Yeah.
So I would go out on a limb and say that we could look at doing that just as a good neighbor. And I think that might go a little ways.
That's your
I think we
color
can go farther
temperature.
than that. I think we can go ahead and commit to that, make sure that that gets done.
Okay.
I think from Mike Shanahan, owner of Stack Storage, I don't think he would have a problem with that. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's your light temperature, your kelvins.
Yeah,
You're
correct.
looking at 2,700 or 3,000 versus 5,000.
Yeah, and for safety, security, et cetera, the intent's still met. It's just not quite as piercing. We've all seen those headlights come down the road at us before. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, would somebody now like to make a motion?
Go ahead, you got it. I move the docket number 2022-56-DP to allow for development plan approval of